Wednesday, the 24th of July. This is PMQs Live on GB News with me, Emily Carver, and Tom Harwood. Of course, while Gloria and Christopher take a very well-earned holiday.
Well, in just a moment, Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak go head-to-head at Prime Minister's questions, but not as we've all known it. Of course, they've swapped places. We'll have full coverage of every moment, and we'll be getting full reaction here in the studio from Mike Tapp, the newly elected Labour MP for Dover and Deal, and the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosindell. Well, Mike, we're going to start with you. Congratulations on your election. Now, of course, if you were in the chamber, you'd be sitting behind Keir Starmer, but if you were to catch the Speaker's eye, what would you ask?
I think down in Dover we've seen a real mess at the borders, not just small boats, but also failure to plan over 7 years with the new entry-exit system that's coming in October. We've only got a few months to try and do what they failed to do in 7 years, so I would ask how realistic that is.
And Andrew?
Well, I'd like to ask the Prime Minister if he's going to take up the challenge of Nigel Farage and have a referendum on the ECHR, because without that, we can never sort out this problem of the illegal boats.
So you go in hard with the ECHR question. Same with you, borders-related question too.
All very foreign affairs, isn't it? I suppose, obviously today, PMQs will likely kick off with the events that unfolded yesterday evening, that soldier being horrifically attacked. I'd be very surprised if both leaders didn't make a statement about that, Mike.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It is really grim, horrible to see on social media, and obviously people shouldn't be sharing things on social media and go to the police with any information they have. But yeah, it was not nice to see our servicemen put their lives at risk abroad, and we shouldn't see them at risk when they're at home with their families.
And you should know, as a military man yourself, does it feel almost personal when another soldier is attacked like this?
It does to an extent, you know. It's that sacrifice that a lot of my colleagues have made and their families when they're abroad serving, and they simply shouldn't be in danger when they're in the UK. And obviously it remains to be seen exactly what the motivations for this attack were, but it's, you know, grim, and hopefully we can get more police on the streets and keep us safer.
Yeah, Andrew, I think a lot of people are looking for answers here.
Well, it brings back horrific memories of the murder of Lee Rigby. Any attack on our armed servicemen is absolutely unacceptable. Any attack on anyone is, but to harm someone who's actually serving king and country and defending our freedom and liberties is completely unacceptable. So I hope they find out the motive, because at the moment the motive seems to be rather unclear.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this Prime Minister's questions is a bit of a holding pattern. For the next few months, Rishi Sunak is there almost as an interim leader of the opposition, whilst the Conservative leadership contest gets underway. Nominations open tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
They do, yes, they do.
Andrew, have you decided who you're backing?
Well, I'm very much in favour of Priti Patel, Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman. I think they're my three favourites. One is going to emerge, and one I hope will be our leader. But we've got to ensure that we win back the Reform voters. If we don't capture those people back, Labour's going to win every election. We'll have a divided right, so the left will win. So as far as I'm concerned, we need to coalesce round one of those candidates and get them elected.
Andrew, it's not a system of alternative vote. You don't get to rank your preferences. You've got to pick one. Who is it?
Well, it is actually. We actually do
well, you have
eliminate people.
Right, but you have to pick one to start with.
So the Parliamentary Party at the moment, very few people have really made up their minds. We're going to have to see how things pan out. But I've already made it clear, I like Priti Patel. I think she's fantastic. Suella's got guts. My goodness, the things she says I agree with, and she stood out. Robert Jenrick, I think, has shown as an ex-minister that he's come forward and admitted where we went wrong, and he's also shown incredible courage in what he's doing. So we've got a great choice of people. There are others too, but I think that the party has to recapture that sort of right of centre ground.
Okay.
Otherwise,
let's head right to the House of Commons where Keir Starmer's on his feet.
And I know
there we go. A pretty long Prime Minister's questions there. Normally these things wrap up at about past, but here we are. 38 minutes past the hour, and Prime Minister's Questions, the inaugural Prime Minister's Questions of this new Parliament, has concluded.
Yes, indeed. And we're still joined in the studio by Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, and the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosindell. Andrew, it felt quite cosy in there.
Yeah, it also is rather dull. I thought for a first PMQ, I'd have thought it'd be a bit more feisty. And I have to say, I still don't quite know what Keir Starmer's about. There's nothing he says that particularly resonates. He uses a lot of words, but I don't really know what he intends to do. There's a lot of mist around what this government's really about.
Was this all a bit of a beige session?
I have to say, it is quite nice to see that unity, actually. I think you hear on the doors people saying, look, we're fed up of this tribal politics and this pantomime. And actually on international issues and defence, we are united. And it was good to see that. But I think Sunak is obviously staying in quite a safe place there because he doesn't want to be attacked on his 14 years or Conservatives' 14 years of failure.
Right, well, on that point, what we're going to do is take a very quick break. Get your questions coming in, gbnews.com/your say, and we'll put them to your panel after this very short break.
Right, 12:42 is the time. Welcome back to PMQs Live with me, Emily Carver, and Tom Harwood.
Well, we're still joined in the studio by the newly elected Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, and the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rosindell. So let's get down to the meat of what was discussed now. Mike, were you surprised that the former Prime Minister, now the Leader of the Opposition, seemed to focus all of his questions on foreign affairs?
Not massively surprised. I think it is a safe space, given that there is unity across the House. And actually, I'm really encouraged to see that coming from a military background and working in national security most of my career. It is great to see that the country is in safe hands with Keir Starmer, John Healey, Mr Lammy.
That final question from Rishi Sunak might have been a bit of a trap laid for the now Prime Minister, talking about the royal prerogative, the ability of a Prime Minister to intervene militarily in foreign countries without the say-so of Parliament. He got Keir Starmer to say that that was essential, an essential power for the Prime Minister. How do you think that will go down in places like Birmingham Yardley or Rochdale? Some of these places that the Labour Party has come very close to losing or has lost in the last few months with all of these Gaza independents.
Yeah, that military, the royal prerogative is really important. And if you look at the in-depth, top-secret briefings that the Foreign Secretary, Defence Secretary and Prime Minister will have to engage in order to make that decision, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on that from a backbench, having not seen that information. So it's a sensible way forward, and we're in safe hands with Keir Starmer.
So our newly elected Labour MP is quite happy with how things went there, with Rishi Sunak being so cordial, I guess. But Neil's written in, he says, why did Sunak stay on one topic and offer no meaningful opposition? Is this a lame duck opposition for the next 3 months, Andrew?
Look, you have an ex-Prime Minister who's obviously now phasing out his leadership of the party. He's going to focus on things that are of national significance. Policy is difficult now because we've just lost an election with a huge majority against us. So focusing on day-to-day policy is going to be difficult for any interim leader, and Rishi is now an interim leader. It'll be up to the new leader to then give the party clear direction once he or she is in office. So Rishi's being the elder statesman now. He's talking about global affairs, international matters. Ukraine, of course, was quite a big topic today. But I think that his final question, as Tom has said, was actually very significant because the royal prerogative is vital to protect.
But has Keir Starmer ever indicated that he was not in favour of that?
Well, I'm afraid to say that there's a lot in the Labour Party that don't believe in it because they don't think that there should be any royal prerogative over anything.
Yes.
There's lots, I'm afraid, in the Labour Party like that. So I'm pleased that we have MPs like Mike because clearly he understands the importance of these things. And I think that across the House, national interest has to come first and national security has to be the utmost priority of all of us.
Now, Anna has written in to say, a Labour MP for Dover, that is a surprise.
It's not a surprise to me after the thousands of doors that I knocked on over a 2-year campaign, and people there were failed on the cost of living. They couldn't see a GP, there wasn't police on the streets, and we had open borders from the Conservatives. So these are issues that Labour have put in our manifesto to fix, so
and of course,
it's not a massive surprise.
Your predecessor for the seat was a woman by the name of Natalie Elphicke.
Yes.
She was seen as being quite a right-wing Tory who ended up endorsing you. How did you feel about that endorsement?
So Natalie sent a really clear message to the country just before the election that the Conservatives have failed to sort out the immigration issue and failed on housing. And I was seeing thousands of voters saying that they voted Conservative and now we're coming over to the Labour Party, and I think Natalie represented that.
You'd had
quite
some
nicely.
pretty choice things to say about Natalie in the months leading up to her defection.
To be honest, no. You know, my style of politics is always to go for the policy and not the person, and we had maintained that throughout the campaign. So there was no personal attacks, and that made it a hell of a lot easier to work together for a very short period.
Andrew, how do you feel that Mike managed to persuade his constituency now to vote Labour to control the borders?
Well, let's see what happens. Let's see if Labour do control the borders. My experience of Labour governments, the Labour Party generally, is that they're the last party to control immigration. They may talk about it now, and Mike's completely right. One of the reasons we've lost this election is because we completely failed to do what we said we would do on immigration, both legal and illegal. So it's not surprising that people got very frustrated and decided to vote us out. I'm yet to see exactly what Labour's policies are and whether they will sort the problem out. My guess is that they won't. And I think that they'll be just as disappointed in this government as they were in the last government, which means my party has to really be a lot more radical, a lot more determined to fix this issue once we have a Conservative government in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that are concerned about this issue, Mike. John from Leicester has written, why have you now scrapped the barge, the Bibby Stockholm barge, army barracks accommodation blocks? Now there are going to be lots of people who've come across as illegal migrants who are sort of dispersed into communities.
Yeah. So, firstly, we have laid out really clear policy on how we're going to secure the borders. It's not gimmicks like Rwanda that did absolutely nothing to deter, that only 4 people went out there and it cost millions of pounds. Instead, we're going to put in a border security command that will pursue the smuggling gangs. We're going to treat them like terrorists, and we're going to bring in those counter-terror powers to ensure that we can do that.
Well, hang on, you're going to be allowing illegal migrants, well, migrants who've entered this country illegally, to apply for asylum. The Refugee Council believes that probably about 70 to 80% of those people will be granted asylum because they can't be sent back to a safe country. You've scrapped Rwanda as a deterrent, so we don't have a third country for them to be sent to. So a lot of people are writing in saying, does Labour essentially support an amnesty now?
No, because what we were seeing before is no one was being deported to Rwanda, so they were stuck in the system for 3 to 5 years waiting for decisions to be made. They then had to be put up in the Bibby Stockholm or military bases and in hotels costing £8 million per day. The reason we're not going to renew the contract for the Bibby Stockholm in January is because we are confident that we'll have enough decision makers in the Home Office and 1,000 officers in the returns unit to ensure that decisions are made, those that shouldn't be here are deported. That means we essentially don't need that accommodation.
Isn't this the problem, Andrew, that the Conservative policy was very, very highly visual? If you lived near the Bibby Stockholm barge, you would think that the government was failing on migration. If you lived near RAF Scampton, you thought that the government was failing on migration. It was very visual to you. Now, what might happen is we actually have higher migration under the Labour Party, but it won't have that sort of visual impact, those hotels, barges, RAF bases, and perhaps this is a more politically smart strategy.
Well, we had a hotel in Romford, same issue, and people were very angry and upset about that. That's now closed. But you're completely right. So I'm concerned that the new government's policies will be to cover up the reality of this. Now, it's all very well closing down the Bibby Stockholm, it's all very well jettisoning the third country policy, but that means they're going to be here. So we're not actually going to send people out. I think if someone comes here illegally, we have to send them out. There should be no way that people coming to this country illegally should be allowed to stay. So there has to be a third option. We do, but as I said earlier on, the ECHR is the reason this couldn't happen. So we do need to have complete control of human rights laws in this country.
So, we must, because we're running out of time, we must get your view, Mike, on Keir Starmer's decision to remove the whip from 7 MPs who voted with that SNP motion last night on scrapping the cap on child benefit. It's all a bit Soviet, isn't it? Control, control, control.
No, this is a political party. We're not a club. You know, we're not a debating society, and we've just had been elected off this manifesto, and we've just seen the King's speech, and that's what we were essentially voting through before the amendment came in. So it was sensible to vote against that amendment in order to ensure that we're putting through the manifesto that people voted for. So there was absolutely no problem.
Taking away the whip, though, a bit harsh?
No, not at all. I think, you know, we are a political party. We are serious. The fact is, it's country first, party second, and we are going to serve on the manifesto that we're elected to serve on.
Andrew, is there something slightly Borisian about what happened last night? You'll remember in 2019 when Boris Johnson removed the whip from MPs who were trying to upset his Brexit strategy. What's different here?
So there's a huge difference. So in 2019, when those Remainers were trying to derail Brexit, what they were doing is actually allowing the opposition to take control of government business. That's dreadful. You can't have that. So that was a very different situation. But voting against something you don't agree with on the government, on a general matter...
But this was a King's speech, and there is precedent there that sometimes has been viewed as an act of confidence.
Look, I have regularly voted differently to my own government. I did on Theresa May. Yes, Theresa May's third deal. I was one of the Spartans and voted it down, thank God, and we actually then got a proper Brexit. But you can't have a situation where every MP is completely controlled by party whips. You need freedom and flexibility.
Andrew, do you not think that there was a problem in the 2020 Parliament? There was so much rebellion. Even with an 80-seat majority, the government was losing votes. Is it not potentially a smart strategy to, from the off, from the first vote taken, show that you're not going to take any messing around?
To some extent, there is a limit, I guess, but I like the atmosphere of freedom in our Parliament. It's always existed, where MPs are elected by our constituents and we make the decision. The party whip shouldn't be so powerful that no MP can say or do anything without the agreement of the whip. So I think independence of MPs is important.
Would you like the limit on child benefit to be scrapped?
So what we've got to look at here is the bigger picture as well. So firstly, it was a King's speech.
Would you have preferred that to have been in the King's speech?
When it comes to child poverty, we've been really clear that we're going to combat child poverty with free school meals, sorting out the rental sector, bringing down energy bills, having more secure work for people in work.
But that's your child limit.
So these things are going to be sorted out, you see. It's not that I'm not bothered. It's about having a bigger plan on poverty, and if we can't afford it, we won't say we'll do it.
Well, Mike Tapp, Andrew Rosindell, thank you so much for sitting through that Prime Minister's questions with us, for dissecting it afterwards. Really appreciate your expertise, your thoughts and your opinions.
Yes, you livened it up for us. You've been watching and listening to PMQs Live with me, Emily Carver and Tom Harwood. Don't go anywhere. We're back with Good Afternoon Britain.